judgment, just real talk. This is the Apology Accepted podcast. The views expressed on the Apology Accepted podcast are those of the host and guest and do not reflect the views of any affiliate organization or individual. The content is for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered professional advice. For personal, legal, or emotional matters, please consult a qualified professional. By continuing to listen to this podcast, you acknowledge and accept this disclaimer. Hey friends, welcome back to the Apology Accepted podcast, the space where we dive into real conversations about healing, growth, and creating the life we deserve. I am your host, LaTesha Monique, and I am so grateful to have you tune in to this episode. Whether you're tuning in for the first time or you're a returning listener, I am so glad you're here. This space is for you, friend. In this episode, I want to dig deep into the truth that self-sabotage isn't the same as self-protection. Many of us develop habits and patterns that once helped us survive tough situations, but over time, those same habits can quickly hold us back from growth, love, and opportunities. I want us to explore what it looks like to recognize these patterns, understand where they come from, and take steps to break free. Sometimes the patterns that once kept us safe are the same ones holding us back. So tap in and let's break free of self-sabotage together. Let's start with survival patterns. Maybe at some point in your life, saying no felt safer than saying yes. For example, you might have turned down new opportunities because the last time you stepped out of your comfort zone, you were rejected or you failed. So that no protected you then. But here's the key to that. What once protected you can now keep you stuck. Sometimes the shield we build for survival ends up being the wall that blocks our growth. And this is so true because even for me in my own personal experience, the way I will not go into a business partnership with anyone outside of my household or the household that I grew up in is very real. That no for me is definitely a solid one. And though that has kept me in a box, actually, but it was my comfort zone because I have seen and experienced just bad partnership. And for those reasons, I have told myself I won't do that again. And that is something that has stuck with me for years now. And I do admit that it could have or it could play a part in a lot of my business ventures going forward because I have had individuals ask me, different projects, going into business, having ideas, and I don't mind helping anyone. I don't. But for me to actually be a partner in it, it's going to be a no for me. And though I do, I do have business ventures coming up where I am in partnership, but I am in those partnerships with my siblings. So for me, that's different than being in partnership with a friend or someone who just came up with an idea, because the accountability I hold to my siblings will be different than the accountability I will hold to anyone else. And that might sound crazy because it's like, well, no, you got to hold everybody accountable. Like, once you're in business, everybody is held accountable. But see, for me, not only do I get to hold my siblings to a different accountability, but I also get to talk to them in a different manner. So, for me, it is just different. And guess what? That could be my excuse for simply saying no to out of my comfort zone opportunities. I could be missing my mark because what I tell myself for my comfort is holding me back. I am self-sabotaging all of my possible opportunities. And that's something that I really need to think about. Okay, episode, help me out. So that's just one of my examples, and that's something that I speak about so often because it's so present for me in everyday life and everyday things that I deal with. Like, business opportunities is one of the hardest things that I deal with, as far as being selective in where I put my focus, and being selective in who I partner with, because partnership is is one of those things people don't really understand. Going into business with someone, it is a lot. It's like a marriage, to a certain extent. It's like a marriage, and so you just got to be careful in how you choosing a partner and how you choosing who you want to deal with and work with, because again, and I talked about this in another episode earlier, is that everyone don't have the same morals, everyone don't have the same vision, everyone don't have the same outlook of the mission. And so even though it sounds real good in the beginning, it's always something that comes somewhere in the middle where something has shifted and now goals are not the same. So you always have to, and I think that's one of the things that I did not do in my previous time of partnership, is always coming back to the drawing board where, okay, let's make sure we're still on track for the mission. Let's make sure, how do our goals look now? How do we get there now? And so because of all these things that I know now that I didn't do in the prior, I have definitely put that wall up for self-sabotage. It's so many opportunities out here that I just will not touch. I will not touch. I overthink it, and I can talk myself out of basically anything. I can talk myself out of anything. So that's that. Like, we don't want to. We definitely want to identify self-sabotage and what that looks like for us, but we don't want to get comfortable, like I did, with saying we understand the self-sabotage, we know where it's coming from, and we still going to stay there. So what we want to do now is, let's talk about how self-sabotage actually show up in everyday life, because the example I gave is like one of those not everyday things for most people. I gave an example of going into business and partnership and things like that. But that's not someone else's everyday life. So let's talk about self-sabotage and how it show up in regular everyday life, because it doesn't always look dramatic. It can really be simple things like procrastinating on goals you know you want to reach, pushing people away when they get too close, or even convincing yourself that you're not ready or not good enough for the success you've earned. And that's for everyday people. Like, how often do we self-sabotage where we might say it's a job position that's available, and it's like, well, I know I can't get it because I'm either not educated enough, or I don't have enough experience, or I just don't qualify. So we already identified the things that we can't do or we don't have. But that is definitely a part of self-sabotaging versus saying, oh, okay, I see what they're asking for this position. Now let me set my goals up because I want this position. So let me put myself in place, go ahead and get started on working with some of the things that they're asking for requirements, whether that's going back to school, whether that's getting added training, whether that's even changing your shift, okay? Because it might be a totally different shift. They might need you to, work different times or whatever. So instead of always identifying what you don't have and what you're not qualified for, just understand that, okay, let me read the qualifications, and if this is what I want, then how do I start working towards those qualifications and start knocking it out? Because one thing time don't do is wait on nobody. So it's easy to say what you don't have and can't get. Oh, I don't have a degree, so I'll never qualify for that. So now I'm comfortable with staying where I am because I feel like obtaining a degree is just going to take too much time, or either I don't have the time for it because, after I get off work, I have so many other titles. I got so many other obligations where I just don't have time to actually focus on getting the things that I need for this position that I may want. So on the surface, things feel like it's controlled, then you move on to the next thing. Like you're protecting yourself from disappointment because you have already identified and said out loud, you can't do it. You won't even be able to be in the running for it. So instead of you applying for it and going after some of these things that they are requiring, it's just comfortable and controlled by saying, yeah, I won't be able to do it anyway. So next, how many times have we actually said things like that? Like, I know when me and my husband first talked about moving out of our hometown, and this was years ago. This was 20 years ago, actually. About 20, maybe 21 years ago. We spoke about getting out of our hometown and doing something different and yada yada. And so we kept putting things in place, but it felt like every time we felt like we were about to make the move happen, something always came up. And so we kind of decided to halt that moving experience of, moving out of the state. But once we did it, once we finally did it, I felt like the time was right when we did it because our children were a lot older from the time where we were discussing moving at first. But I listened to people talk about wanting to move out of their hometown and explore different things and, take a job elsewhere and just kind of have this restart to them. And then in the same breath, they always list a gazillion things of why it won't work. And in that moment, when we do things like that, we don't realize that we're actually limiting our freedom, our joy, our ability to step into new possibilities. Why? Because we will always refer back to the list of why it won't work. And we are so convincing to ourselves of the why it won't work. We have no choice but to believe ourselves because we are so convincing to ourselves. Like when we were kids and it was time to take a test. I could always remember being like elementary school and it was test day. And on the bus ride to school, you're on the bus and you with all your friends and stuff, and most of y'all in the same class. Like it was very rare that you and 2 and 3 other friends on your bus was not in the same class. So the conversation was always, I'm not going to pass this test today. I'm not going to pass this test. Like, I've always said that. Like, I'm not going to pass this test. I'm not going to do well. Tests suck. Like, that was the start of my patterns of self-sabotage and kind of talking myself out of things. Like, when I think about it, going back that far, I was definitely one of those kids that self-sabotage. Like, I'm definitely going to fail this test. Or I remember trying out for cheering, Virginia Randolph. And I remember saying, I'm not going to make the team. I'm not going to make the cheering squad. I'm not going to be able to do it. And it was like, no, I just can't remember no one saying, girl, shut up. I think we all were like in aligned with, we ain't gonna make it. We ain't gonna make it. It's gonna be hard. They want us to do backflips and cartwheels, and I just don't know how to do that. And I'm not gonna be able to be on the team, and I'm not gonna be able to cheer. And I don't recall any of my girlfriends at that time as elementary school age just saying, girl, shut up and come on. But that was the start. Like, that's where our patterns start. So sometimes when we think about how we self-sabotage today as adults, we have to kind of go back to, where did this begin? Like, where did it start? Because it definitely didn't start at adulthood. It didn't. But those patterns that we never broke just stayed with us. And that's the thing that we don't understand. But the good news is we don't have to stay stuck in those patterns. Breaking free is about choosing growth over fear. And that is so easily said than done, because fear is a real thing. So I don't take that for granted, because fear is real. But choosing growth over fear is possible. It's possible. You have to put in the work, but it's possible. That might not look like reframing mistakes as lessons instead of failures. Like, you might don't have a true do-over with everything. But it might mean practicing right now self-compassion, being kind to yourself in the moments you feel like you messed up. Like when you have messed up and you understand that, dang, I missed the mark. You have to go back and kind of give yourself that pep talk versus giving yourself that negative talk saying, you know what? I knew that was going to happen anyway. Because I will admit, all those times as a kid where I said I was going to fail the test, I never failed. I never failed the test. Ever. And I think it was me saying I'm going to fail this test. So when I did, I wouldn't be so upset because it was like, I knew it. I knew I was going to fail it anyway. And and sometimes in life we kind of put that negativity out there. So if it does happen, we're able to convince ourselves, oh, I knew it. Because what did I say? We do a great job with convincing ourselves anything. We will talk ourselves out of any and everything. So we have to learn how to create healthier coping tools so we don't lean on our old patterns. And it's so hard to break old patterns. Now if you are a mom out here listening, you know what I'm talking about. Because you know how when your kids was little and they used to come in the house and take their shoes off and leave them right there at the door in the middle of the floor. And in the beginning, we might not have said nothing and we'll just go and move the shoes over, right? But as they gotten older and they're preteens and they doing the same thing, now we want to fuss and be like, get your shoes out the middle of the floor, your shoes on. But that's their pattern. And so now it's hard for them to adjust because they're just doing what they've been doing. That's my example. I don't know why I took it back to that. Maybe because I just moved some shoes out the way. I don't know. But what I'm saying is create healthier coping tools so you're not leaning on old patterns to get through new challenges. Healing is really about rewriting your story. And that's all we are doing. We are rewriting our own story through healing. And that's if we are healing for real. Because I've shared this in most of my previous episodes, is that during this journey right here that I'm on, I am healing for real. And so when you are really healing, you are able to rewrite your story, choose patterns that support who you are today, not just who you had to be back then. Because who you had to be back then was the person that survived under different circumstances. Your circumstances today are not the same. And you don't have to use those same survival techniques to get through your new story, your rewritten story. Because we hold on sometimes to all of our past traumas and hurt, and we bring all of that into each chapter of our life. And so that's why sometimes you might listen to a friend as they vent, or you might hear stories and you might think, dang, she's now, I don't know, 60. And she is still holding on to some of that childhood trauma. Well, the reason why is because she took that same pattern and self-sabotage with her through each chapter of her life that she was blessed with. And so we have to understand that we are able to choose a different pattern. We are definitely able to rewrite our story. It's just that, how do you want to rewrite your story? Do you want your story to look the same, or do you want your story to look different? It's all up to you. Like today, what's today? Today is September the 21st, 2025. Now ask yourself, 10 years ago, what was I doing? And when you come up with that answer and then you say, okay, am I still doing the same thing? Whether that's your job, whether that's business opportunities, whether that's your location, it really doesn't matter. It really does not matter. And let me be clear about something, because I always get a lot of backlash with this whole employment thing. When I speak about employment as far as your 9 to 5, and I say, you should not be doing the same thing. And people say, well, I've been on my job 10, 15 years. And that is great. You have job stability. You're able to show that you can show up for this thing every day. That does not equal job security. It just means you have job stability. But on that job, have you even learned anything new? That is what I refer to, and that could go under, self-sabotage and how it shows up every day. Because some people get in positions at their job and they know what they know, and they've been doing it for the past 40 years, and they're not willing to learn anything new. Why? Because it's not in their job description. That is a part of self-sabotage. But again, we are able to rewrite our story for it to fit and be how we want it to be. We just have to change our patterns of thinking. We have to get out of that negative self-sabotaging, and we have to really reassure ourselves and give ourselves those same pep talks that we give to our children or our nieces and our nephew, friends, whoever. The same pep talks that we give to others, we need to learn how to give them to ourselves, because we need to hear positive reinforcements as well, and from ourselves, because we have that ability. We don't have to stay stuck or stagnant in a place just because it's comfortable to us, because we know it, because we are used to it. But that don't mean we have to stay there, because what do we want to do? We want to be free. We want to have our joy. We want to be able to have the ability to step into new possibilities. And we will not be able to do that if we so heavy with negativity. So, before I end this episode, I have a question for you. What is one pattern you've noticed in your life that may have once protected you, but is now holding you back? Go ahead, answer that question to yourself. I recommend you write it down so you can read it, so you can reference it, so you can always remember that this once protected me, but now it's holding me back. How do I change this? How do I change this? So again, that question I have for y'all is, what is one pattern you've noticed in your life that may have once protected you, but is now holding you back? Breaking free is about choosing growth over fear. Self-sabotage can feel like safety, but true protection comes from growth, self-awareness, and courage. When we choose to break unhealthy patterns, we don't just survive, we thrive. Let's stop apologizing for the ways we once coped and start accepting the power we have to change. Thank you for tuning in to the Apology Accepted podcast. If this episode helped you recognize where self-sabotage shows up in your own life, share it with someone who may need to hear the same reminder. Until next time, keep growing, keep healing, and remember, fear may whisper, but you get to choose the voice of courage. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Apology Accepted podcast. I hope today's conversation sparked some growth for you. Be sure to subscribe and share with others who might need this reminder too. Until next time, you all, remember, healing starts with a simple apology. Take care.